Hello and welcome to this video. Hate is a strong word, isn't it? It's not a word we should use lightly. But do you find that people also use the word love lightly, don't they? Oh, I love this, I love doing that. You know, I love a good back scratch in the morning. Well, we all do, don't we? I do. I love a good back scratch in the morning, and that's an example of something that I would love, whether it's similar to the love that I have for my kids or the love I have for my country. It's a different thing, isn't it? And hate's like that. So before we get on to this video, I just want to get across to you, I'm using the word hate more in the back scratching sense than, how I would feel towards Nazis or other people of that ilk. So with that proviso at the start, this video is going to be called 10 Bands I Bloody Hate. Okay? There's been quite a few videos out there with that title, and they seem to have done very well. So I thought I should jump on the same bandwagon. And I thought, well, I don't want to be just a mere copyist. And so after much thought, I realised by affixing the old English swear word bloody before hate, it would give the spin that was all uniquely my own. Now, if you detect a slight hint of sarcasm at the beginning of this video, it is because these videos serve a very strange purpose. Same as my overrated videos, these what I call negative videos, nasty videos, where we delve into the worst parts of our personality, where we don't want to seek for the positive, we don't want to see the best in people, we want to see the worst in people, and we want to be able to identify that and then poke our finger at it and grit our teeth at it and expel it from our cave of comfort. Things we hate, we should be open to. We should be able to hold them in our hands and say, why do I hate this? What is it about it I don't like? Is it really hateful? Or is it really showing something in my own personality that I don't like? So that's worth bearing in mind before we start on this list. So I hope for the people who will come on and say, I hate these videos, which you can't do, of course. I've got you in a philosophical trap before you start. So anybody say they don't like what I'm doing, unless they want to be ironic. So I give you all permission to say, oh, I hate videos about videos where people hate people. You want to be all clever and ironic, then that's great. Do that. But please be aware that I might be doing that. We all might be doing that. There might not be any real hate in the world. It may just be irony. Irony. Who knows? Satire, parody, or maybe I really do hate these. And maybe, this has been boiling up for a long time now. I'm nearly 3 minutes into this and I haven't started for apologising for what I'm about to do. That's really what's going on. So shall we stop the apologetics and get straight into my video, which I know you all want to watch because you're here watching it, aren't you? If you didn't want to see what I hated, what bands does Andy hate? What bands does he hate? And then once I've done this one, I'm going to do what artists I hate. I'm going to do two. I thought it would be best to do that. But on this channel, I like to deal with bands because I'm very interested in performed music, stuff that's made on guitars and drums and saxophones. I'm really interested in that. It doesn't mean that music that's not made like that I don't like. But, when we say bands, that's what I feel, and so it's interesting to look at bands. Shall we just get on with it, or shall I stop just prattling on endlessly? Okay, right, so I'm about to begin the list of 10 bands that I bloody hate. Get a little smile then. This is a naughty video. You know it is, don't you? Should we just start then? I'm going to start. Are you ready? I know I'm building it up because I know you really want to watch it. I know you're excited. So at number 10, I have a band that's... do I hate this band? I don't actually think I hate them. I think in a way I quite like them. I don't know. But they're on the list anyway. I wouldn't like to listen to them. That's the truth. So at number 10, I have I think the biggest selling pop duo in history. with over 100 million units sold, making them far bigger than many of the classic rock bands and prog bands we feature on this channel. 100 million sales. And it is, of course, the British pop duo the Pet Shop Boys, who emerged in 1985 with their lead singer Neil Tennant, and then another bloke playing keyboards, which was quite a popular sort of form of band in the 1980s. You got Yazoo, and then you got Erasure, and Pet Shop Boys sort of followed on in that. They weren't even original in that. I would never knock the Eurythmics. I never knocked Yazoo. You know, they did some great stuff, and it was hard and cutting edge. But as the 80s progressed, and it moved from that sort of iconoclastic, daring, you know, gender-bending popular music of the early 80s, it moved to a much more sort of Thatcherite yuppie music, and I felt that the Pet Shop Boys was the embodiment of that. Here they stood in their suits going on about West End girls. You know, when I was heard this in 1985, I didn't know what a West End girl was. I didn't know what a Pet Shop Boy was either, but I did have the feeling that a Pet Shop Boy was somebody who had done something that probably I wasn't too sure what it was that they had done. There was that feeling, wasn't there, about the Pet Shop Boys, you know. So they sort of launched on. Now, West End Girls, if that came on the radio, I don't think that's a bad song. It went to #1 here. It was a big song. Now, I think you know, quite pathetic talents of Neil Tennant and the other bloke managed to fluke a reasonable song, especially dealing with Neil Tennant's complete lack of vocal delivery, singing ability, or even charisma, I think. So they started to fluke it. They went to #1, and I felt that this band were also almost a product of that sort of 80s, you know, yuppie music criticism that, you know, permeated the NME and more on the pop side, Smash Hits. And I believe Neil Tennant had worked for Smash Hits. And so it felt like they had the world on their side, you know. So they then had hit after hit. Some of these hits, like You Were Always On My Mind and Go West, were already cover versions. I didn't understand why they could do that. Erasure did the same thing when they started doing ABBA cover versions of ABBA. And it was so cheesy, horrible keyboard sounds, really cruddy drums, and really sort of robotic, you know, emotionless versions of pop songs. They had a stream of hit records, including It's a Sin. Now, when I played in the progressive rock band IQ, for various reasons I won't go into here, we did do a cover version of It's a Sin. I actually played it, and the guys in IQ specified that I should wear a choir boy's outfit. Now, I don't know whether that's what's made me absolutely hate the Pet Shop Boys, because I can remember being on stage playing that in the Astoria in London, which is no longer there, which was actually also the home of GAY, the gay nightclub as well. Not that that's got anything to do with this, but I do have a funny story about that. But I don't know whether I can tell it here or not. I might do it, actually. A friend of mine that will remain nameless was in a band who will remain nameless, and they are on tour. And once they're on tour, it became quite apparent that their lead singer was actually very homophobic. And they ended up the last night at the Astoria playing. And this homophobia got on the nerves of the rest of the band, because nobody likes a homophobe except another homophobe. And none of these were homophobes. And so the man who was doing the light show did a brilliant example, and there the lead singer was singing, and he could feel the lights beaming down on him and tracing across his body as he created those rock and roll shapes, which are very important to manly, you know, progressive rock. Little did he know that the light that was actually shining down, which was one which was used when the Astoria turned into GAY, and it was the word GAY. And as he sung, he had the word flashing and moving across his body, unbeknownst to him, but beknownst to the people in the audience who had a good old snigger about it. And I like that. I like that. So there I was, a few years later, on stage at the Astoria playing a Pet Shop Boy, It's a Sin. And in my choir boy outfit, underneath the very, hot lights, I nearly passed out. And I think that traumatic event might have just edged it over for the Pet Shop Boys, who really are on number 10, because I don't hate them that much. So shall we move on to number 9 now? Right, so at number 9, I have got REO Speedwagon. When I first got into music in the early 80s, it was because of the new wave of British heavy metal. And all us new wave of British heavy metalers, we had 2 Bibles that we referred to find out what bands we liked. One was Tommy Vance and the Friday Night Rock Show, and the other one was the magazine Kerrang, which would cover all things heavy metal. I would religiously go and buy Kerrang. Actually, the first copy I bought of Kerrang was the 3rd copy. It may have had David Coverdale, Richie Blackmore on. Of course, the first had Angus Young on. I didn't get that. My friend got that, and I saw that, and I really should have gone out and bought that, because I would love to own a copy of the very first copy of Kerrang. At some point, when I got into jazz, I think I chucked all my Kerrangs in the bin, which was also a mistake, because if I had them now, I'm sure I would have a fantastic, YouTube channel where I could just go through old Kerrangs. How wonderful would that be? It would be wonderful. Anyway, looking into Kerrang, they had all sorts of different bands. And the band that was featured quite often was the American rock band REO Speedwagon. Now, to me, REO Speedwagon are in the same genre as the AOR bands personified by the likes of Foreigner or Journey. Now, I really like Journey, and I'm not so keen on Foreigner, but they're all right. But REO Speedwagon, what the hell were they doing in Kerrang? Anyway, I didn't know this, so I went out and got an REO Speedwagon record, and I was horrified by the awfulness of this band. I mean, this was middle-of-the-road rock music, and the thing I hated the most was that singer with that, it almost sounded like a fake American country music drawl, and I've done an impersonation on this channel before of that singer. I don't know his name. You lot do. That's the trouble with this video. I don't really know anything about these bands, and I'm trying to pad it out without having to actually do any research into them, because I don't want to research. I mean, you want to research into this dross. Anyway, and I can remember a song they did back 40 odd years ago, and it went something like this. I remember everyone you said when I did do you my thing, and I love you forever. I'm gonna keep on loving you, and it's the only feeling I knew. I don't win. Now, this is probably getting on your nerves at this point, and I can keep doing that, even though I can't remember how the song goes. But that one song, I think that was the one I got. I don't know if I bought a single or taped it off the radio. I explored the band. I don't think I bought an album by them. I'd remember that. Oh, I thought they were absolutely awful. And around this time on BBC TV, late one night, that was it, I remember. They had a concert, and it may have been Journey and REO Speedwagon. I think this is all coming to me now. I think singing like that, it's woken up a traumatic memory. I do feel a lot better now for doing that. I might have to set up a side thing on my YouTube channel looking at, singing in the voice of the lead singer of REO Speedwagon as therapy. What is his name? Would they have to be named after him? I'm going to have to find out what his name is now. Is he? I mean, is he still alive? Has anything happened to him? I know nothing about him at all. Let's look. I'll just put it into my computer. REO Speed. Right, it's come straight up. Rock band, it says. Right, REO Speedwagon. There they are. REO Speedwagon, or simply REO, is an American rock band from Illinois. Formed in 1967. That is a long time ago. The band cultivated a following during the 1970s and achieved significant commercial success throughout the 1980s. Their best-selling album, High Infidelity. High Infidelity. It's a pun. When a band has a pun as an album title, you know they're crap. Right, contained 4 US top 40 hits and sold over 10 million copies. Their number ones include Keep On Loving You, which is, I think, the one that I was doing, wasn't it? And then Can't Fight This Feeling. Right, now, who's the lead singer of this band? Where's the lineup? I've got to scroll down now. This is proper YouTubing, isn't it? You know, I could just do this all day long. It's so much easier. I just decide to talk about a band, and unlike the other YouTubers that just look it up on Wikipedia, then try to remember it and then regurgitate it, what you do is you just read it off Wikipedia. It'll save people a little time. So according to this, the lead vocalist is called Kevin Cronin. Cronin therapy. Cronin trauma therapy. Can you imagine loads of people in the room going like that, you know, until they can get out the trauma that they felt in the early 80s, have to put up with this awful band. I'm moving on now. Apparently, last year in November, Bruce Hall, their bass player and vocalist, he announced he was going to take a leave of absence from touring because he had to have back surgery. And he was replaced by Greg Bisnett's brother, Matt Bisnett, who also played with David Lee Roth. Matt Bisnett gets all the gigs quietly because of his brother. They had Graham Lear on drums at one point, one of my favourite drummers. I'm finding so much out about this. And in 1985, Brian May got up on stage with them and played Johnny Be Good, apparently. They've had John Entwistle, well, it must have been something they did. Anyway, I'm just wittering on about REO Speedwagon. I knew I wouldn't talk about them for long, and I'm being facetious and talking about them for extremely long on my channel, when I should be moving on to and this is a band I hate all these bands, but this band I really do. I don't get it at all. And it's, so at number 8, I have the Ramones. Now, this is probably the most uncoolest choice, because I've noticed to be cool, you have to like the Ramones. And people genuinely like the Ramones because it's visceral rock and roll. And I like visceral rock and roll, even though I'm prog and a jazz fusion. I like it. You know, I like the Sex Pistols. I like Motorhead. Anything that really rocks and just hits you in the face. And the Ramones would be that for me. But when I listen to the Ramones, I just don't hear anything I like in the music whatsoever. I mean, do you? I think it's the vocals. The vocals aren't very rocky. It's just like sort of chanty boys. And that's what they seem like to me. It's like you get the feeling, I don't know whether they're posh boys, but I do get the feeling they're posh boys. And, you know, coming from a sort of cool place where there was probably other cool bands coming out, they were able to sort of put this sort of post New York Dolls Stooges band, you know, put on the leather jackets, because all young boys want to wear leather jackets, and then stand there, you know, singing these awful rock songs which don't have the sort of gutsiness of AC/DC and don't have the noisy exuberance of the Sex Pistols. They don't seem to have that much energy in them, you know, and it resides on hooks like, hey, oh, let's go, hey, oh. I just don't like it. I don't like the Ramones. Now, I'm probably, with this one, I probably feel I'm probably wrong with hating the Ramones, but I just never felt there's anything about them that's any good. What do I know about the Ramones? They sort of came out, emerged in 1976. Everybody gives them the credit for sort of inventing punk, especially British punk. Oh, the Ramones did it first, even though I think their album came out in February 1976, like about 2 months before any of the British punk bands emerged. And they were already going before the Ramones came out, but they get this idea, they get their sort of tagged on with the Stooges and Iggy Pop and Patti Smith as being one of the originators of punk. I believe that punk comes from Great Britain, because that's the sort of guy I am. And I think the sort of American punk was actually just an extension of garage, you know, US garage rock. And I think there's a certain aspect that has to make it into punk. The Ramones played their part. They probably made hundreds of albums. I know one song by them, which is the one I just sang. And they also all seem to die very quickly. I don't think any of them are alive, or was one of them alive now? They just didn't seem to last that long. And I don't know what that is. I don't know whether they took... I just don't know anything about them, to be honest. I got no interest in this band, but I do hate them. Never want to hear them. It's like if I was driving along and any of these bands came on the radio, I would turn it over, except for one. There's one I would listen to. We'll get to that when we get there. Right, at number 7, I have the awful posh Mumford and Sons. Right, I don't mind a posh band. Poshies should be allowed to make music the same as everybody else. You know, I mean, the Genesis, they're pretty good. They're poshies, aren't they? Radiohead, they're poshies. Pink Floyd, they're poshies. You know, poshies have made a lot of contributions to music. But there's a couple of poshy bands on this that what I don't like with the poshy bands is, you know, they've got all the contacts. You know, they get sent to some private school and everybody's there and they're going, oh, what does your dad do? Oh, my dad's the head of EMI. What's your dad do? Oh, he's a music agent. Oh, we should form a band because our dads would be able to really help us out with that. Yes, they would. We should do that. But I don't really have any musical talent. It doesn't matter. There's a thing called Americana. You only have to strum a few banjos, you know, wear a cloth cap. What's a cloth cap? Yeah, flat cloth cap. What sort of cloth cap? Like the working classes would wear. That's the sort of thing. Maybe wear a waistcoat. Oh, I have a waistcoat. Lots of waistcoats, even though I'm only 14 years old. Well, we've got a band then. We'll buy some banjos and, you know, some white shirts, and we'll don the attire I just described, and then we can just sort of drag 3 chords out and then just copy the band. If you've ever heard the band, I've never heard of this band called The Band. Who would call a band The Band? If you're going to call a band, you should name it in the same way that our parents named a band. You know, you should name it in the, you know, like my father, who has got his own lawyer solicitor business. Well, when I get the job, it will be you know, my dad Mumford and Sons. Oh, that's a brilliant idea. The general public will like that. Yes, do you think it just point to the fact that we are a few poshies, and we don't really want that to happen? Don't worry about that. All we have to do is swear a bit and, you know, and just like really virtue signal in a way that's, you know, makes us look like we're on the side of the underprivileged, and everyone will let us get on. But what about Winston? I mean, Winston, he's really into all that right-wing stuff, isn't he? He loves all that. Maybe he won't say anything. Oh, I don't know. He could do. I mean, he's called Winston, for example. And I don't think he's named after the fellow in 1984, do you? No, I think he's named after Winston Churchill. And, you know, I mean, he's related to most of the royal family and most of the aristocracy in Great Britain, isn't he? Old Winston is. Winston Marshall is the only one I know out of Mumford and Sons. And at some point he tweeted something about a book about Antifa that he sort of had read and he thought was okay, and that meant he had to be cancelled and destroyed, which of course it didn't destroy him because he's posh. He was then able to reconstitute himself as a YouTuber like me, but not talking about music, talking about right-wing political points of view. Which, you know, I have a sympathy for some of them, but I'm going to state here right now, while we're on Mumford and Sons, I want to tell you my political beliefs here. I believe in redistribution of the wealth. I think people should be taxed, especially the rich, and that should be used to help the underprivileged. And by underprivileged, I don't mean identity groups. I mean poor people, kids who are in families with no money, they're disabled, people with mental health issues. That's what I think we should do, right? That's the first thing. I believe in strong unions. You know, I believe in people having jobs, and when they get into that job, they are not treated like slaves. And I think we need strong unions. And I think we should nationalise energy, travel, and that National Health Service, it may need to be subsidised, so the rich have to put in some money or opt out for it. That would be the one thing, and if which is a bit of a right-wing point. But I think that's my politics, really, right? So I don't think, especially if you're an American, and someone on the left is basically somebody who, you know, walks down the road and drops a few pennies in a charity box, right? If you're American, you probably think, oh my God, Andy's a communist. So I'm going to get a lot of people saying you're a communist, Andy. But also the fact that I do watch Winston Marshall's channel, and sometimes he makes some good points. You know, he stood up in Oxford. I've got really serious on this. Just don't get go. He stood up and did one of those Oxford addresses, and he had to go at what's her name?
Nancy
Pelosi or whatever. Go and have a check it out. It's quite funny. He did score some good old points. So Winston's no longer in the band for being a fascist right-wing Nazi, and that's all I've got to say about Mumford and Sons. I don't like the music. I don't like Americana. Right? I don't like it. I don't like it because poshies play it, and the worst poshies that ever play it are the British ones. The British poshies. They should be like Radiohead. That's what they should be like. Do intellectual sort of electronica. That's what they should do, with all their like analog equipment that they can afford to put in their huge garages because they have, all this real estate to work from. See, I can get quite left-wing and commie, I can. Right, shall we move on to the next band on the list after Mumford and Sons, which I think is number 6. Now, this is the band that if it was on the radio, I wouldn't turn it off. And you know why? Because they're a good, solid, progressive rock band, especially in the early days, and that is, of course, Marillion. Marillion, which is loved by the watchers of this channel. There'll be a few of you championing and punching the air. There'll be a few prog fans that sit back and go, right, I'm going to have to get my cup of tea and sit down because Andy's going to now talk about Marillion. And he knows the viewers of his channel love Marillion. You all love Marillion. You know why? Because you're around about my age. And there you were, early 80s, no girlfriend, bit nerdy, working hard at school. Couldn't quite get into Duran Duran, wasn't cool enough to like Duran Duran, wasn't cool enough to get into like The Cure and the Smiths. So you were a bit of a loose end, weren't you? Sort of fobbling along, trying to listen to ABC and drag a little bit of enjoyment out. And then suddenly, in 1983, this band comes out and they are making progressive rock. And they sound exactly like Genesis. Right, and they're storming up and down, talking about politics and talking about Northern Ireland, and that appealed to your sort of pseudo-intellectualism, And he finally punched it and said, "Thank God for that. I could now have another band I can like, along with Rush." And you ran out and bought that album. Now, of course, at that age, you weren't familiar with Yes or Genesis or any of those prog bands. You never heard all of that. So, hearing this for the first time, it sounded absolutely fantastic. Of course, there was a whole bunch of bands doing this. And then certain bands on the UK neo-prog scene, like Pendragon, had been doing it for a long time. And some of these bands were very good at it. But Marillion, for some reason, and I've never been too sure what that is, seemed to capture the public's imagination. And they started to do very well, and they brought Script for a Jester's Tear out, and it went into the charts. And then they did a clever thing. They cleaned up their sound in a way that was ready for that yuppie movement that happened in the mid-80s. And by the time Misplaced Childhood came out, which had all the smell and whiff of a progressive rock band, they had records like Kaylee. Now Kaylee is a truly awful ballad. With awful production, horrible 80s keyboards over it. And the only... Even if there is some goodness about it, that song has basically been the inspiration for millions of girls who are of a certain age now, walking around Great Britain, and when you spot a Kaylee, you know exactly the type. Now I've gone from being a commie to a snob, haven't I? But they're of a certain type of Kaylee, if you ever meet a Kaylee. Now, I think, Fish, who was the lead singer of Marillion, who, even though he was got the nickname Fish, which I believe is because he used to like to sit in the bath, or was that Chris Squire? Because Chris Squire had the same bloody nickname of Fish. They couldn't even have a nickname that he had nicked off a bloody proper progressive rock band. My mate was into Marillion. He got Script for a Jester's Tear. I actually went out and got Market Square Heroes, that EP, when it came out, because I was really into prog already. And it was rubbish, and I couldn't be arsed listening to it. The thing that put me off is that it was the sort of 80s production and the bad musicianship. That's what I didn't like about it, sorry. Marillion have just kept going. They've kept going. And they've moved from this sort of, slightly 80s-fied, incompetent progressive rock that they made in the early days to a sort of middle-of-the-road Jeremy Clarkson style dad rock. Now, all of you are saying, Andy, you need to go and check out a Marillion album, because that's what they always did. They brought an album quite recently, and the cover looked like it looked like a makeup box by L'Oreal. You know, it had all these testers on it going around in a circle. Don't know what the hell it was called. So I went out and listened to that. I put the headphones on and I listened to it. It was polite and nice. It was well done. They've definitely got better in terms of production. It sort of was prog because it went on for a long time. And it was the most middle-of-the-road pap I've ever heard. It's like with music designed for bank managers to listen to. You know, it was like, you know, somewhere between, I don't know, Dire Straits and Mike and the Mechanics. And that betweenness in between those two is a horrible place. Let's move on. So at number 5, I think I'm up to now, we have the Foo Fighters. Shall I move on? I hate the Foo Fighters. I absolutely hate them. I like Nirvana. Dave Grohl seems like a nice guy. He's a nice guy without a doubt. He leaves Nirvana, which had been this dark, brooding, angst-ridden band, changed the music world. And he puts his own band together, which is basically him at the start, playing all the instruments. And he brings this rock album out in the mid-90s. And I remember checking it out because I thought this could be really good, because a lot of people were doing stuff there. And I just didn't think it was, because it was sort of very the middle of the road rock. It was erring towards sort of hooky songs. There was no heavy riffs on there. It was a lot of sort of almost like post-punky riffs that you would hear Blink-182 doing. Dave Grohl's singing was okay, but it wasn't anything to write home. I just thought it was all really, really mediocre. The fact that they are now dominating the world after all this time is a real surprise to me. They're the embodiment of what Nirvana achieved. Nirvana made heavy rock and almost like alternative rock as well mainstream. It made them mainstream, and if you wrap that all up, you end up with bands like Linkin Park. But Linkin Park still at least have that angst-riddenness within them. You know, they're still able to drag out the sort of melancholia and secret rage of any white middle-class kid sat in the suburbs, you know, annoyed at the fact that their parents are well off and they've got everything. But Foo Fighters don't even corner that market. They sort of corner this jolly, almost like variety music aspect of music making. Someone once described to me Dave Grohl as being the Max Bygraves of rock music, which I think is very, very apt. And if you don't know who Max Bygraves is, well, you know, then, which is probably most of you who are younger than about 60 and not from the UK, but it does sum him up a lot. They're just so bland, and they just keep going, and everybody loves them, and all these dads take their kids and they indoctrinate them in the ways of, like, you know, mediocre rock music, and they all start there, you know, they can all sing along because there's some catchy hooks on there. I don't know, you know. And then, like Travis Barker died, who was a great drummer. You know, I thought he was a great drummer. He dies, you know, was the only other guy that had any sort of personality in that band, because the rest of them, I wouldn't know them if they came up to me in the street and tried to ram 3 power chords down my throat. You know, I wouldn't recognise them. It's Dave Grohl's band, you know. He's a champion for rock, you know, but his championing of rock is just making rock the conservative music of our age, which I'm sure it has to be now. Right, is that them destroyed enough? Right, shall we move on to number 3, where we really get to the ones I absolutely despise? So, the obvious one to put on here was Coldplay. Now, Coldplay, I don't like Coldplay, right? In the old days, I can remember I was on tour and I arrived at a bar in Leicester, and everyone came up to me in the audience. They were saying, "Oh, you need to check this band that comes down here and plays. They're not signed, but they're absolutely amazing." And that was Coldplay before they got their deal. I remember being told about them. So they obviously had something that was pretty magical for all these people to have just bought into them so much before they had a deal. And I think it was the songs. When they released their first album, which was recorded at Rockfield, they were a real band and they played. And some of those songs are very, very good. It's not my type of thing. And that is why I don't really want to put Coldplay on the list. As time's progressed and they got bigger and bigger, they needed to work out, same as U2 and many bands that are faced with this, how do you play stadiums? And you have to create these sort of shouty tunes that are almost like football chants so that people could sing along. Chris Martin was very talented. He has been having, believe it or not, even though he didn't look like he had that sort of rock and roll charisma, he can hold the audience. And I watched them at Glastonbury this year. And I thought, oh, I don't like him, but he's doing a brilliant job of pulling that band together. But there's a whole swathe of really middle-of-the-road albums that nobody actually bloody played on, which is all a bunch of computers. And I'm not into it at all. But there's one band that came out around a bit similar time, and they were like the poshy version of Coldplay, and that was Keane. Now, to say I'm not keen on Keane would be an underestimate. So this is the way I see it. Grunge comes out, changes everything in the early 90s. Out of grunge comes Radiohead, some poshies, and they put a twist on it. Eventually, it takes a while to get there, but they put this twist on it. They were also listening to Jeff Buckley, who is a genius and has brought this album out called Grace, which is an absolute masterpiece. And this starts to impinge itself on this sort of poshy rock that Radiohead are making. Radiohead are massively successful. In 1997, I think Q Magazine brought out the 100 greatest albums of all time, and they put OK Computer at #1, even though it had just come out. They were that confident. And so everybody had to like Radiohead. And then a spate of bands started to emerge. Coldplay was one of them. Star Sailor was one of them. And right at the arse end of this was Keane. Keane was formed by a bunch of extremely posh people who went to a private school. And now they're called public schools here, but for the people who live in the New World, that's a private school. And they went to a very posh private school. The lead singer of this band was called Tim Chaplin. And then the other guy that was in the band was another Tim. I'm really trying to... And he was called something like Tim Oxley Rice. You know, proper prosh. Now, I believe this band didn't have a guitar. Now, they wouldn't have a guitar in there because none of these people in this band would have gone near an electric guitar, but they probably had classical piano lessons whilst they were at school, along with the violin. So they decided to put this band together, you know, and this album comes out, and it's the most insipid music I have ever heard in my life. I wish I could do an impersonation of them, but despite the fact that they made all these records that sold all this stuff and went to #1 and all this type of stuff, I cannot remember anything by them whatsoever. And according to this, it says my phone is about to run out of power. That can't be happening. I got it plugged in. Yeah, well, I'll carry on. We're nearly there, aren't we? Anyway, that's Keane done. Don't like him. Poshies, rubbish. That's it. Right, I'm going to move on. Got put off by the lack of power. You see, these poshies, they control everything. They probably aren't making this video. They go, there's someone, you know, in their big sort of elite world where they have that big map of everybody. There are somebody's criticising us there. Pull the power on that phone right now. At #2, I have a band which are just bloody horrible, and their music's horrible, but they're also fronted by a right knob. And that is, of course, Simply Red. Who the hell likes Simply Red? Well, loads of people do, and I tell you, they don't know anything about music, because if they did, they wouldn't buy this crap. It's Simply Red. So Simply Red came out, and they sort of came out of this sort of left-wing 80s, you know, right-on type of thing. Of course, you know, once they start to make millions, they soon shut up about that. But I think that's why they call themselves Simply Red. But it could have been the named after the carroty, curly hair of their lead singer, Mick Hucknall. Now, Mick Hucknall is the man that gave gingers a bad name. And even though in this world of identity politics, where you're not allowed to say anything about anybody based upon their look, whether they're black or white or fat or whatever it is, you can't criticise them unless they're gingers. And I feel sorry for the gingers out there, because they still have to get this prejudice all the time. Now, I'm telling you, gingers, the reason for this is not because of Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran, you know, might make pretty bland pop music with his acoustic guitar, right? But he doesn't seem like that bad a guy. But there is an arrogant little person who fronted a band called Simply Red. And when Simply Red came out, he, you know, quite modestly said about himself that he was the greatest singer in the world at that time. Something to that effect, right? Around about 1991, they brought an album out called Stars, which probably sold about 50 million copies. It was so huge. Everybody liked it. And the worst thing is, it had some really insipid, funky tracks on there. And they got session musicians on. The playing was what I would say is tasty. I didn't think it was tasty. But other sort of good musicians I know, suddenly they were mad about this track, Something Got Me Started. And every time I went to the band, they wanted to play Something Got Me Started because it was insipid and funky. Oh my God, it was the worst. And I had to play this all the time over and over again. And I kept trying to persuade the people around me that I said, this Stars album is just middle of the road crud. It really is. Oh no, it's tasty playing on there. I don't think any of them have said it now. It's bloody awful. They've kept going. Later on, they had the hit with this record called Fairground or something, which is just, I mean, I can't even hear a band on there. Mick Hucknall has remained like a knob for the whole time. And as he's got older, he's just looks like a sort of putrefied Scotch egg. Don't like Simply Red. Right, number one on my list of bands I hate has become on this channel, I think, my touchstone for bands that are complete rubbish. This band is so rubbish that there's not anything to really grasp on to criticise about it. They are so bland. If you want to know what I don't like with music, it's blandness. Blandness, you know, mixed with being a twat, you know. But these people aren't twats. They don't even have the Mick Hucknall twattishness for us to grab onto. The band is, of course, another duo that I think emerged in the mid-90s called Lighthouse Family. Right, so Lighthouse Family have cornered the market in this sort of incredibly insipid, middle-of-the-road, easy listening crud. Made 100 times worse of their singer seems to have no emotional range or actual pitch range. And so he sits there going, oh, so yeah, and their music is the equivalent of a best wishes or birthday card that you have to go and buy when you've forgotten about it, and you run down to the corner shop and you get there and you look through all the birthday cards, and you know, and you manage to find one that maybe will have a man who is black and white holding a baby that's in colour and he's not got his shirt on. That type of card. That, to me, the Lighthouse Family represent that. It's truly insipid. Now, what's amazing about this is that we could have got away with never having to know them, because when they first formed and their first album came out, it was so rubbish that the record company deleted it. But because it was so insipid and middle of the road, I think one of their songs probably got picked up by media. There was probably some awful cooking show. They went, oh my God, this music's brilliant for us. We know whilst we're eating our vol au vents, we can stick this on in the background. And so they did. And that sort of propelled them back up to the charts. And they cornered the market for a short while in that market, which can be very lucrative. And it's the market of people, mainly housewives. I know I'm being sexist now because there's a lot of housewives who have got great taste in music. But there's a certain type of person, and Nan might be like it, or Grandad. And in a year, they are going to buy one album. One album, right? They are the sort of people who would have gone out and bought a Max Spygraves albums. Now, when you go into a charity shop and you go through all those albums, there's never any decent albums there, because anybody with decent albums have protected them and passed them on. All the albums you see in a charity shop are those albums that were bought. The people who bought them, that was the one album they bought that year. And we can see the cavalcade of musicians who have pandered to that market. Lighthouse Family was the band that did that in the 1990s. It was aimed at people who knew nothing about music and were only going to buy one song, and then they were going to go, oh, I really like it. I love the sentiment of this song. It reminds me of my dog that died. It's that area, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I abhor it. I hate it, right? And the Lighthouse Family do not have anything interesting arrangement-wise. They don't have anything interesting in the vocal delivery. It is deliberately designed to just sound like a big, soft, edgy thing that's going to stick in your mouth and blast you up so you can't breathe properly. You know, oh, I don't know. They're like a big fat tranquilizer made out of fur. That's the only way I can describe them. That is rammed down the public's mouth to shut them up. keep them happy. They're no longer going. The lead singer decided to pursue a solo career. I'm sure they made about £1 billion, and this duo is sat somewhere now, never having to work, and their kids will never have to work. Whole families will be able to live off the legacy of this awful music, and I think that's wrong. And this is where my left-wingness comes in. I think if we really want to get ourselves out of this terrible situation we find ourselves, where people are so poor, what we've got to do is identify the bands that are crap, and then go and take their money off them and just shut them out. They shouldn't be there. Lighthouse Family shouldn't have made any money out of this crud. It should be distributed to the poor. That's what I think is the only way. My revolutionary tendencies tend to come out, and I do get all pitchforky when I'm faced with these bands. And these bands have been. Bands I hate has been the Pet Shop Boys, REO Speedwagon, the Ramones, Mumford and Sons, Marillion, Foo Fighters. Oh, I've missed one out, haven't I? I've only done 9. Oh, which one did I miss out? I missed out number 4. I missed out number 4. At number 4, I had Dire Straits. Right? Dire Straits, who are so bland and boring. They're like the architects of bland, boring music. They took Dylan's sort of genius to be able to sing in this sort of monotone, drony voice that democratised rock music, and they took that and turned it into some middle-of-the-road pap that only estate agents will like. All right? It's like Mark Knopfler, who is a Dylan clone vocally and a Chet Atkins clone guitar player. He's a good guitarist. Has taken those two things and in the middle of the 80s wound that into somehow appealing to that sort of yuppie class, especially on the album Brothers in Arms, which is one of the most awful albums ever made. And Money for Nothing is just one of the worst records. Now, I hate to admit this. I bought Money for Nothing as a single when it came out, and I tell you why. Because when I first heard it, I was impressed that Omar Hakim, the great jazz rock fusion drummer, had done the drum solo at the beginning. Of course, their drummer wasn't able to do such a thing. And so I bought it I was quite excited that Omar Hakim had got to number 1 and was doing a drum solo at number 1. So I thought, I've got to get this record. And then, it's like, even though they were dealing this sort of, really bland version of sort of country blues, Americana, and a little bit of folk music. And I've got in trouble when I've talked about them before, because I think I've called him Scottish Mark Knopfler. And he could be Irish, he could be Scottish, I don't know. He made the music to local hero. That's what I don't know anything about these bands. The videos that get the big views on my channel is always when I'm talking about what I don't like. I don't know anything about them. If I was talking about 11th House now, I'd be right in the detail. I'd be able to get right in there and tell you about dates and people and why they did this. But Dire Straits, all I can say was I was at school, there was 2 types of people in my 6th form. There were the gothy types, and they were all poshies, right? And they felt that they could rebel against their parents by wearing big long coats and spiking their hair up and listening to Sisters of Mercy. That was the one lot. And then there was the other one lot that were destined to go to university, do very well and end up in high-paid jobs and did not want to rock the boat. And they were the ones who liked Dire Straits. And they would try and persuade me as a musician in the school that Dire Straits were very good by lending me copies of Alchemy and getting me to listen to that long-winded guitar solo, even though at the time I was into Alan Holdsworth, and it wasn't going to cut any mustard with me. And mustard is an interesting thing, because English mustard's powerful and it gets up your nose, and it's got a kick, unlike French mustard, which is weak and pallid, a little bit like their bloody their Olympic ceremony. Annoying, but insipid. I hate insipidness. I hate when people pretend to be cutting edge or could pretend to be, pushing against the grain, and actually it's just the conservative view of the time. And at the time, that Thatcherite conservative yuppie view, the loads of money thing was best exemplified by Dire Straits, who I've got a number 4. If I keep talking about it like this, I'll stick it at number 1, because I think they're almost like the Godfather as bands like Sickly Red and Keane and Lighthouse Family and all this crud, Mumford and Sons, aren't they? And even Marillion. Now, I quite like Love Over Gold. It's a bit proggy and it's quite moody and dark. I like that. The track Brothers in Arms, that track itself, I actually find quite moving. So I am not just hating it all for the sake of it. So that's why they're down at number 4. But it's what they represent. It's what all these bands represent. But the thing is, rock music's dead now anyway. It's all gone. It's a waste of time. We're talking about a waste of time. Why are we going on about this? These bands will now fade into obscurity. And in 100 years, no one will know about any of this. What music will survive is probably the subject for a good video, a proper video, which I can get my head into. And this is the first time I have just like that had the inspiration to do a video at the end of a video. That's quite interesting. So could you make a note of that in the comments? Because I'll come and read the comments later. Say, Andy, make a video, Philosophy Sunday video, about bands or music that will probably survive into the future. Let's hope it's not Keane or the Lighthouse Family. I won't be there anyway. If you like this video, put a like on it. If you want to see some more, you could subscribe, and that will tell you probably, if the algorithm still works like that. If you want to support me, you could pop over to Patreon and become a Patreon. If you don't want to support me by getting involved, but you still want to get a little bit money, like a tip that you would give to a busker that's done a good job. So if you think you enjoyed this and I've done a good job, you can put a little bit into my PayPal tip jar down below. I thank you all for your viewing, for your liking and subscribing, for your lovely comments, and for your financial gifts that you send across. I do read them all. I'm inundated with messages from bands that want to see stuff, for my patrons, all sorts of things. I try and get through them. And the PayPal, they all have lovely messages on. I don't know how I would reply. I'd probably have to copy and paste the email across, or I don't know how it all works anyway. But for all of those of you who've done that, I do really appreciate it. And I am going to do a video where I get all those comments together and read them out as a big thank you to everyone who's done that. I've been chatting for 50 minutes. I'm done. That's the magical time for me. Thanks for watching this video. I am absolutely boiling hot now. It's taking me back to that bloody Pet Shop Boys cover in the Astoria. Anyway, I don't want to think about that again. My good friend Richard Boxley has popped around for an Englishman's lunch, which we do quite often. And I thought, as we were going to sit and chat out in my garden about stuff, I could ask him his opinion of some of the bands that I absolutely hate. To see, just to get a different opinion, really, Richard. Because
I've got it.
I know. I'm getting attacked.
Just gonna have to stay there.
Yeah,
some kind of triffid.
It is, isn't it? It's come right in between us. So yes, I'm going to read you out these band names now. I'm having toast with marmalade on for my lunch. I wasn't that hungry. What have you got for your lunch?
I've got my little lunchbox here, and I've got a ham, cheese, and chutney sandwich.
Ham, cheese and chutney, yes. That's a brilliant combination, that is.
And some ready salted crisps.
Do you like the ready salted, or was that just the last left?
Well, no. Recently, I think I have turned towards ready salted being my favourite flavour. What does that mean? It never used to be. It used to be my least favourite flavour, because it's sort of like the flavourless crisp.
Well, it's not flavourless. What it is crisp flavour.
That's true, yeah.
So if you want to appreciate the actual flavour of what you're eating in its raw form, then ready salted is the one to go for.
What it is I've recently eaten too many of those posh hand cooked crisps, where there's barely any flavour at all, and I usually buy ready salted of those because it's the only flavour that's generic that everyone likes. And then I've got used to those, and that's turned me on to just ready salted in general. Anyway,
and of course we're having a cup of tea to go with it. So I feel quite happy now. I've got everything I need to carry on. So at number 10 on my bands I hate, and you're just going to give your initial opinion straight off the bat. And
is it number 10? Does that mean it's the least that you hate?
Yeah, I hate them, but it's not. It isn't an ascending order of hatred.
It doesn't.
So when I say that, if you just say whatever you think, whatever comes into your mind first off, okay. So you can see that, because people are going to accuse me of being full of hate, and then if you like some of these bands, then it won't be full of hate. There'll be a little chink of light of love. But if you hate them all, then I might be onto something.
Yeah, universal hatred.
Yes, and that's very good to have, I think, for things. So the first band at number 10 I've got is the Pet Shop Boys.
The Pet Shop Boys.
Yes. Well, that's elicited a laugh.
I don't know why that's elicited a laugh. The Pet Shop Boys. I can imagine you hating the Pet Shop Boys.
I do hate them.
Yeah, I don't like them.
You don't like them either?
No, but I wouldn't say I hate them.
Why don't you like them?
I just think they're really boring.
They are really boring, aren't they? What makes them boring, do you think?
It's the voice.
It's his voice.
Yeah.
See, now everyone says, oh, it's all subjective. That's exactly what I said. I said it's his voice.
It's just boring.
Yeah.
I wish they'd just
and
go
they're a bit
west and not come back.
They're a bit yuppie-fied, aren't they?
They should go west and just not come back. But some people must like them because they've been going for ages, haven't they?
About 40 years, I'd say. And Pet Shop, West End Girls I quite like. But it's like they fluked quite a good song, and then all the rest after that were pretty. It's the Sins, all right. Anyway, so that's the first one. I think we're in.
I do remember though, as a child, when watching either Top of the Pops or the ITV chart show. I don't know if you remember the ITV chart show. It was on a Saturday morning.
I do remember it very well.
Pet Shop Boys video would come on, and I'd either turn the TV off or just really, really want something else on.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
It's like, oh no, not the Pet
Were
Shop Boys
you
again.
waiting for the rock chart to come on, right?
Anything really?
Yeah. Every now and then they'd have the rock chart, and you might get 4 seconds of Rainbow, mightn't you?
At that age, because I was probably pre-teen then, so I would have been like waiting or hoping that something like Bros would have come on, or Jason Donovan, or maybe even, I do remember at one point the theme tune to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was at #1 for a few weeks, and that really excited me. So
so you're getting to know sort of where Richard comes from musically. Right, the next one, I bet you won't know this, you might be a bit too young for this one. The next one, number 9, is I've got REO Speedwagon.
I do know of REO Speedwagon, but I can't say that I've listened to them a great deal to be able to express a real opinion.
Well, they sound a bit like this. I'm gonna keep on loving you.
Yeah, I imagine that's what they sound like.
Richard.
Oh, sorry.
It's the only thing I wanna do. I don't wanna do something. They're singing that. I can't remember the lyrics after that. I hate them, I do.
What's the name of the guitarist in that band?
Oh, I don't know.
No, I think it's a band that I've had many opportunities to listen to, and I've chosen not to.
There we go. But we don't. You just don't really know enough to really know how bad they are.
No.
At number 8, I have the Ramones.
The Ramones.
Yeah.
An interesting choice.
I don't like them.
A lot of people do.
I know.
They wear T-shirts with their name on them.
All sorts of people do, even people who've never heard them.
Yeah.
I would never do that though, because I have heard them.
No. I mean, I think at one point you probably could buy like Ramones T-shirts in Topshop or
You could, yes.
something like that, specifically for people who are not music fans but want to appear to be cool.
Yeah. But do you like them?
Again, I don't really know. I haven't listened to them an awful lot, but the few songs that I have listened to, I did quite like, but probably not enough to really want to invest in again. But then there are probably bands that I have been quite fond of in the past that were big fans of the Ramones and possibly even influenced by the Ramones.
I know, that's the thing.
So it's I'm going to put them down as
indifferent.
Yeah,
they're
indifferent.
I seem to really hate them, and I think I should like them because I like quite aggressive rock music. They just sound a bit dull.
And they're also, it's the fast down picking as well. That's the sort of origin of that, isn't it?
You know,
Excuse me for talking with my mouth full.
Yeah, that's part of the video. That is part of the video, you see. Do you remember? People don't seem to go there. You know, AO, the company that delivers like fridges and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Are they still going?
I believe so. That's the company that delivered our fridge that we were just talking about.
That's weird that I should bring such a thing up, because quite cleverly, they use the hook of Blitzkrieg Bop to market their stuff, and that's when we all knew about them, isn't it? Because of course, the Ramones shout AO, don't they, in that song?
Yeah.
Right. At number 7, I've got Mumford and Sons.
Mumford and Sons.
I'm telling you don't like it. I'm telling you when you don't like it because you laugh.
They are the peak of like that hipster, what do you call it? Hipster American folk kind of.
Americana.
Yeah, that's the one.
English possibly Americana.
Yeah, with their braces and their shirts and their funny hats and funny little banjo things.
What do you think to them?
I don't like them.
You don't like them at all, no.
That's a definite not like.
Right, at number 6, I have Marillion.
Maroon. So, not that keen on Marillion.
No.
My introduction to Marillion was when I played in a band many years ago. I was probably at college myself. And the singer in the band, for whatever reason, had found a Marillion cassette tape
You do find them.
of his dad's,
Yeah.
and was obsessed with the song.
It was
What's the song called? Kaylee?
It was
Is
probably...
Kaylee? Is that
Yes,
the
it
song?
was Kaylee.
Yeah, and he made us play it as a cover in the band, and we were like it's sort of what I don't know, like an indie kind of
What sort of music
Green
were you
Day
in?
type band.
What
I
sort of
suppose.
music were you into at that time?
Probably metal.
Like Metallica or something?
Yeah, and he made us play that song, and
Why though? What was it about him, you think, that made him like that
I
song?
don't know. He just latched onto it in some kind of depressive sort of.
Was he a bit sort of incel-y? Was he a bit nerdy? Or a bit interested in IT or anything like that? Was
Yeah.
it? Yes?
Yeah,
Is
but
that what it was?
Yeah, but out of all of us, he was the only one that had a girlfriend, which is the sort of, obscurity of the situation.
Maybe it was that song.
That got him a girlfriend.
Yeah, maybe he managed to get in the vicinity of a lady and then played her favourite song, and because it's quite a nice song, she
Yeah.
probably thought he was a sensitive type. Right, there we go. Number 5, Foo Fighters.
Foo Fighters. I've got mixed feelings about the Foo Fighters because
I haven't.
no, I didn't think you would. I mean, obviously Dave Grohl's the greatest drummer that ever lived because he played in Nirvana.
Yeah.
The
So you like
drum's quite
Nirvana,
hard.
do you?
Well, I grew up on Nirvana.
Yes.
I was of that time when I was 11, I suppose, when Nevermind came out.
So you can now work out how old Richard is
Yeah.
from that, if you've got the sort of
Well,
mathematical skills.
in this lifetime anyway, because obviously I'm a Time Lord, so that's just this regeneration.
Some of you may have seen Richard recently and may know him as the pipe smoker. But his actual nom de plume on YouTube is Wave Tenet. Wave Tenet. There'll be a link down below, and so if you want to go check his YouTube out, especially if you're into sort of like really boring videos about modular synthesis,
Yes.
I
do aim to try and make the most
Don't-
boring
I-
videos
you think-
possible about modular synthesis.
you think I haven't sold it, but my lot, when I said boring videos about modular synthesis, about 25% of them really, their ears picked up. They are beautifully done. It's not like my videos. His videos are properly made. They are very beautiful and nice. If you're doing something you want a bit of background on, because you've created
You're
quite long
overselling it a little
videos,
bit
haven't
now.
you?
Yeah, some like with the more kind of ambient type things might be like an hour or whatever of the
Yeah.
same thing over and over again.
And he's got very pretty imagery on there, and he does all sorts of things. And you started talking on them, haven't you?
Twinkly lights. Yeah, I have recently started talking because I realise that's
People like to have a bit of talking, but
Yeah.
I felt you weren't being funny enough. So
No.
this is why I'm now getting Richard round to sort of train him up to having a laugh.
Yes.
Because it's a bit, I don't know. Anyway,
We've got
I
off
won't
topic.
criticise your YouTube anymore.
Foo Fighters. So
Oh, we can move on to them.
Okay,
Right,
we'll
the
forget
next
them.
one I've got on the list is Dire Straits.
Dire Straits.
There's a laugh there.
Dire Straits. I was watching Dire Straits on the TV the other day, and
Why?
I did. Well, it just came on. Like when most of the time we watch various streaming services, but when you turn the TV on, the default channel is some music channel that plays live music from decades ago. And there was a Dire Straits until you've got a couple of minutes before you press the button for whatever streaming service you want where you're watching something. And it was a gig I can't remember where it was. It must have been in the 80s or maybe early 90s, and there was Dire Straits, but Eric Clapton was playing with them, and they'd all got suits on. They all looked the same.
Did Mark Knopfler have a headband on?
Yeah,
in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, Dire Straits. It's just a bit sort of. It's a bit boring.
It's just boring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really boring. He's a great guitar player.
Oh yeah.
Very good guitar player.
Yeah. I think it's because they're songs, aren't they? I'm not a fan of songs.
They're just boring. I like Brothers in Arms.
Yeah.
He plays a Les Paul on that. Richard's a guitar player as well, so we can talk about guitar. And I like his tone more on the Les Paul. There was a serious comment there, so it was a little serious. But we will get out of that. Right, the top three now I'm going for, I'm sure...
Pure hatred.
This is pure hatred. So at number 3, I've got Keane.
Keane. Keane. Now the thing that I really dislike about Keane...
You do dislike them, don't you? Nobody's going to like Keane.
They started out without a guitarist, didn't they? Piano-based. And they got a lot of, praise.
Yes, they did. They did.
And then very quickly they decided they needed to just stick a guitar in there so they could conform with the rest of the indie masses. And I thought, well, that's just stupid. Why have you done that?
You've taken away the one thing that was remotely interesting about you.
Yeah. And then,
although when you heard them without the guitar, it sounded like there was a guitar in there
they tried to make it
astonished anybody who doesn't know about modern production techniques and the fact that a keyboard can sound like a guitar. Oh, I'm going to move on from then. Right, here we go. These last two ones are just going to hit home. So at number 2, and you're going to be surprised this is at number 2, I've got Simply Red.
Simply Red. Don't care for them.
No.
No.
Why?
Just boring.
They are boring, yeah, but there's an extra factor, isn't there, with Simply Red?
Well, it's what's his name?
Mick Hucknall.
That's him.
Yeah.
Hucknall.
And what do you think of him?
I don't like him.
You don't like him, do you?
No.
Why don't you like him?
I don't like his voice. I don't like what he looks like. I don't like anything about him, really.
I said on my section that he looked like a putrefied Scotch egg, and I've illustrated that using some CGI technology, where I've got his face and then put a Scotch egg over the top and then just half faded it in, and there's a certain point where you can't tell where the egg ends and the Hucknall begins. And I think he is responsible for giving Ginger Peeper a bad name. Oh my God, what's going on here?
Low battery.
It can't be. Well, we're nearly at the end of this one now. Right, so the number 1, I have... And don't laugh.
Okay. I'm already laughing.
At number 1, I have the Lighthouse Family. Oh,
the Lighthouse Family. Very inoffensive.
They are inoffensive, but for some reason they really offend me.
Well, it's the inoffensiveness, isn't it?
It's so inoffensive, isn't it? So yeah, I'm gonna do something that isn't inoffensive to you. Oh no, that bloke's black. He's the most unblackest black man I've ever known in my life. He needs to get the doctors and say, "Oh God, I'm a black man, and I don't seem to have any soul whatsoever." I'm not saying black people should have soul; they can have whatever they want.
It's just boring, though, isn't it?
He's boring and soulless, and it's insipid. I chose the word insipid.
Insipid.
Yes.
It's inoffensively insipid.
Yes, brilliant. So there we've got to the end of this video. Thank you very much. That's it now. It is definitely over. Goodbye, everybody. Say bye.
Bye.